I'd like to, thanks very much for the invitation to speak. I'd like to also begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we're meeting, and to remind ourselves that we are discussing issues of social justice on Aboriginal land. One of the beautiful things that we learn from the many wonderful cultures and spiritualities and histories of our First Peoples in Australia is the centrality of telling stories and treating them as something very sacred, very healing, very political, in that, I guess, in that sense that was taught to us by the feminist movement, that the personal is political. And so I'm going to begin with a little story. In my immediate family, we are very strict religious devotees of the teachings of Mark Latham. We read to our children every night when they were young. One particular night, my son, who was then probably around 7 or 8, said to me that he didn't really feel like reading to me, and he didn't really want me to read to him, but could we just lie together and read our books together? And I thought that was beautiful. So we lay there on his bed reading our respective books, and after a while he turned to me and he said, "You know, Papa, I can't get to sleep at night unless I read first." And I said, "Same here, son." And he said, "That's because when I become an adult, I want to be like you." And I just melted, you know, it was just such a beautiful moment. It's what fatherhood is all about. And then he said, "Well, not bald." Another pregnant pause, or fat. Now, my son is the king of the one-liners, and he still continues to absolutely beat my partner and I in any argument, so we just don't bother arguing anymore. As a matter of fact, he said to me the other day when Jackie, my partner, said to him, "Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you, Gian," and he turned to me and he goes, "Hey, Papa, when Mama says I'm not going to argue with you anymore, does that mean I've won?" I said, "No." So, but the reason I tell the story is, on this occasion, he wasn't trying to be a smart aleck. He was actually stating the obvious because he was aware of my intellectual limitations, that I might not get the obvious, and that is that his desire for emulation was limited only to a shared love of reading and nothing else. And so the reason I tell the story is, you know, many of us who have a strong sense of solidarity with people who are pushed to the margins, people who, in the words of the great psychiatrist and theorist of colonisation, Frantz Fanon, are denied, are systematically negated and furiously denied all attributes of their humanity. For those of us who stand on the side of those who are oppressed, we're often described as bleeding hearts, and whatever we have to say, whatever critique we wish to carry out, whatever questions we wish to pose to the established order and to the dominant discourse, they're written off as the sorts of things, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? I would like to put it to you that rather than bleeding hearts, we're simply stating the bleeding obvious, just as my son did to me. And that's why I'm going to really, I guess there's no way of embellishing what has been attempted in this year's federal budget. I am going to be very partisan, not on the side of Labor or Liberals or the Greens or the Palmer United Party or any particular political party, but certainly on the side of the people that my organisation assists and stands in solidarity with, and I suspect you feel the same way. And that is taking a side. It is being partisan. It's not pretending any kind of objectivity. That doesn't mean we ignore evidence, quite the contrary. But certainly we take a very strong stand against the kind of ideological drive to increase the level of inequality in this country. The simple fact of the matter is that the government has framed this budget as being tough but fair. The reality for the people who every day wage a battle, whether it's a financial battle to survive, or a battle to get out of bed, or a battle to face what's outside their door, or a battle to get a roof over their heads, whatever battle, the people who are waging a daily struggle, it's not tough but fair, it's tough but cruel, because it has ripped the guts out of what remains of a fair and egalitarian Australia. Now, I'm not under any kind of misconception as to our egalitarian tradition. I know its limitations. It's very severely limited. In many ways, there's a mythic element to this egalitarian ethos in Australia, because we know very well that it was built on the blood shed by colonisation. It has systematically excluded the colonised, the First Peoples, from any notion of egalitarianism. It is very gender-based. It has always been predicated on a very masculinist view of egalitarianism. It has accommodated such perversities as the White Australia policy, and it continues to accommodate quite happily the absolutely abhorrent treatment of people who legitimately seek asylum on our shores. But nevertheless, there is an instinctive, I guess, aspiration or desire or dream of an Australia that is built on some notion of fairness and equity. I'm not suggesting that there is a mainstream acceptance of the complete elimination of all inequality, a zero Gini coefficient. However, people know when the line has been crossed, and I believe that mainstream Australia, including many people who would not describe themselves as being politically engaged or having any particular sympathy for people who are doing it tough, people feel that a line has been crossed. And it's very simple. It's our very sense of the social that has been completely trashed. And so what we are seeing is an attempt at the socialisation of loss and the extremist privatisation of gain, and the absolute fetishisation of the market as the solution to all of our problems. Because of course, if you pamper the already wealthy, the wealth will somehow trickle down. Well, you know what? We're still waiting. We're still waiting for the wealth to trickle down, because we know that the market is notoriously good at keeping the wealth at the top. That's how it's built. It's as simple as that. We also know that, this budget might pretend to be about helping people into jobs and off welfare. That's a very neat little formulation, but the measures will do nothing of the sort. They will force people into poverty. They will humiliate people. So there's a very important distinction there, because material deprivation is coupled in this case with a very, very serious humiliation of human beings. And we know the health outcomes of being completely disempowered and crushed, the crushing of the human spirit. And it's the very thing that Frantz Fanon described so eloquently and shockingly in his analysis of the effects of colonisation in the context of the Algerian battle for independence from the French. We know that whether you're a young person or an older person or a person living with a disability or a single mum, you are not going to be helped into a job by being made poor. A young person is not going to get a job by being made to live for 6 months of every year on fresh air and sunshine. A young person is not going to be helped into a job by being sent from Centrelink, which is hard enough, to a charity. It's not charity that people should feel they need to depend on, it's justice they should feel that they can count on. And we know that the simple reality of why there is high youth unemployment in particular is structural, not behavioural. And so it's a complete lie to suggest that we need to use levers to change individual behaviours. We know, let's just do the simple maths. I'm not a labour market economist, but anyone can tell you, putting aside the more than double the national figure of unemployment for young people, and in some areas of high concentration of youth unemployment, far more than double. Putting that aside, we know structurally that if you look at the figures, and these are very conservative figures, and there are a number of contested versions of how high the level of unemployment and underemployment really is, but the conservative figures that we've got around 1.5 million people who are either looking for a job or more work. So they're either completely unemployed or possibly very seriously underemployed, only having a couple of hours of work a week. So 1.5 million people roughly. And we know that the job vacancies Australia-wide are estimated at around 150,000. So no number of sticks from the government's dismal armoury are going to create jobs that are not there. For that matter, neither will carrots. Neither will carrots. And so, to sort of suggest, well, people need an incentive, that too is not going to create jobs that are not there. It's as simple as that. We also know that you don't build people up by putting them down, by humiliating them. Even that left-wing think tank, the OECD, tells us that you don't create a strong economy by increasing the level of inequality. What we've got at the moment is a Treasurer who has very boldly stated that it is not the role of government to reduce inequality. Well, I'm being filmed, so I won't use the expression that comes to mind when I hear such a claim. I see government as the opportunity, and I mean there's a very anti-government ideology behind a lot of the budget proposals, budget measures, but also in the recommendations of the National Commission of Audit. But to me, government, and I think this is a mainstream gut feeling when it comes down to it, government is the attempt to do collectively as a people what we cannot do individually. It's as simple as that. And that's a good thing. Government is not the enemy. That's a good thing. Small government shouldn't be an objective. Good government should be the objective, with whatever it takes. And that means pooling our resources. And that's what this government seems to be ideologically completely opposed to. And that is the idea of pooling our resources as a nation. That's why they have walked away from the challenge of very deliberately and intelligently broadening our revenue base so that we can afford the things that matter to us as a nation, such as a disability insurance scheme, which the nation has, it's a beautiful moment in our history when public opinion says, yes, we're willing to pay extra because this is a good thing. That says a lot. Or the Gonski education reforms. This is one of the greatest social crimes perpetrated by this government, I would have to say, is the complete trashing of the Gonski education reforms. They may have been imperfect, but they were a very serious attempt to address the complete inequality in the allocation of education resources. And by sticking to our current model, and I'm not just talking about the quantum of funding, but how the funding is delivered on the basis of student need. blind to the sector, but focused on student need. The fact that that has been trashed is a recipe for entrenching exclusion and entrenching inequality in this wonderful country. And that to me, you know, I mean, where do you start? Well, that's a great place to start as to how we have deliberately increased the level of inequality. But not only has this government refused to reduce inequality, it would seem that some of these measures are actually a concerted attempt to take from the poor to give to the rich. It's as bad as that. Now, let me say, there's nothing smart about humiliating people when they are suffering and struggling, economically, let alone on any levels of compassion or humanity. There's nothing smart about making it unaffordable to see your GP. There's nothing smart about claiming that we are in the throes of a fiscal crisis when we're not, despite what I said earlier about the very serious challenge of broadening our revenue base. We're not in the throes of a fiscal crisis. But if we go down this US-style path of austerity, we will be staring down the barrel of a social crisis. We will be staring down the barrel of a social crisis if that level of inequality is ramped up. If we speak on the one hand about the ladder of opportunity, and on the other hand, we kick the ladder away. If we condemn people for not being able to get up the steps rather than building a ramp. You're all familiar with the social relations model for analysing and understanding the construction of disability in a social context. Well, I think it's an extremely salutary and useful model for us understanding the way we view and construct complex needs, because it's very much about what we as a society expect of ourselves and of each other. At the moment, with the example of young people who are unemployed, you know, this may be the first government in history that is actually, or since colonisation, when of course we did it on a mass scale in sending convicts out from England. This may be the first government since then that has actually sought to reduce the level of youth unemployment by increasing the level of youth incarceration. And we know that people with complex needs, sadly, tragically, unconscionably find themselves face to face with the criminal justice system far too often. Our prisons are places where we put people with many, many complex needs. And we know Angela Davis, the great anti-incarceration activist and philosopher from the United States, has said very eloquently, prisons don't disappear problems, prisons disappear humans. And I would put it to you that if we're comfortable to do that to asylum seekers, and we're comfortable obviously to do it to our first peoples and our most recent peoples, are experiencing rates of incarceration, imprisonment and humiliation way out of proportion to the general population. If we're comfortable doing it to the first and to the last, there's a complete sense of a logical continuum in doing it to others in between who happen to be problematic, who appear to be problems to the logic and the ideology of the marketplace. Now, I'm painting for you some fairly grim pictures. I don't apologise for that, because what I'm saying is only a tiny, it's a very, very poor articulation of what is already happening on the ground, because even the measures that haven't, the fact that the measures haven't been passed and implemented, there's already a feeling of incredible dread, a feeling of defeat. And we know from experience that people need even just the tiniest nugget of hope And you see this time and again, where we see it with asylum seekers, getting into a leaky boat with nothing but that tiniest nugget of hope in their pockets. You see it, I find it particularly inspiring in women escaping situations of domestic violence, day after day, accepting that this is their lot, accepting that they deserve to be mistreated, to be humiliated, to be abused, accepting that they must deserve it because that's what they've been told. Well, you can extrapolate that to the general population, of course, who are being punished for being poor. But then one day, despair means there is no alternative, but then one day, or gradually, the woman will say, I don't deserve this, and I don't know what the alternative is. I have no idea what lies outside that door, but I'm going to take that leap. And so she finds herself sleeping in the car with the kids, as one brave woman explained to me here in Canberra when she took off and had no place to go. I mean, how criminal is that in a country as rich as ours, that we can't even guarantee immediate accommodation for a woman escaping domestic violence? Just beggars belief in our rich country. But she drove around Canberra with the children saying, let's play count the kangaroos, until the kids fell asleep, because she didn't want them to feel her sense of fear and dread. So when the kids fell asleep, she'd pull up and cry and wait till the next day and use the public toilets to wash up. That's the nugget of hope. It's very tiny, but a lot of people are feeling a very strong sense of despair in the face of these budget measures. Now, the other side of the coin is very hopeful, and that is this. I have never in my life seen such an outcry against this budget. I've never seen a budget that has been welcomed by everyone, ever, no matter who's in power. Budgets always suck for somebody, but I've never seen a budget where there is such a chorus of deep offence taken by the general population across generations, across class. It's very, very interesting and heartening. I have never, for instance, seen ever public sympathy for the young unemployed. Never. They are always the easiest kick. They are always the easiest target for complete lack of sympathy from anyone. People might feel sympathy towards aged pensioners. To some degree, people feel sympathy towards disability support pensioners, although that's been chipped away at, because they're choosing that lifestyle, according to some discursive practices. There was sympathy generated beautifully towards single mums because of the unconscionable measures taken by the Labor government to single mothers in pushing them onto the lower New Start allowance. There wasn't much. There's always been a bit of a gendered subtext to sort of a moral condemnation of single mothers, in my view, that has always had that sort of unspoken assertion, mythical of course, that this is a choice. We shouldn't have to pay for their choice. They just shouldn't have babies. Simple as that, But because of the cruelty of those measures by Labor, people did begin to feel a sense of sympathy, and because of the great bravery of the single mums in organising themselves to tell their stories fearlessly. But I've never seen expressions of support for young unemployed people until now, because the measures that have been concocted against them are just so vicious in their intent. The one word that I haven't used sufficiently in these few thoughts that I'm sharing with you this morning is the C word, class, because more than anything, to me, it sums up what is going on, and that is, the Treasurer has said, well, this is just class war, old-fashioned class warfare. Well, they can wage war on the poor, and when we speak out against it, they can call us class warriors. They can attempt to unleash the destructive violence of unbridled market forces in people's lives. Witness, for example, the suggested changes to the tertiary education sector and to health sector. And when we stand up against that, they'll call us socialists. Well, they can call us what they like. It won't silence people speaking the truth. Warren Buffett, the well-known multi-billionaire, famously said, "There's class warfare all right, but it's my class, the rich class, that's waging it, and you know what, we're winning it." And nowhere do we see that more evident than in the attempts of this government to really create a deeper chasm between the haves and the have-nots. I'll end on, and so I do feel that there is a common sense of solidarity and compassion within Australian society, and I hope that we can actually be enriched by this and think very differently about people who have been marginalised even in times of great economic prosperity. So I will end with the beautiful words of Lilla Watson, the great Aboriginal activist, who said, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." Thank you.